Hello, welcome back to Seaweed Brain, a Percy Jackson podcast live from IAIA/IAIA for the last time. This episode is going to be our wrap on Circe by Madeline Miller. An important midpoint, I suppose, in the greater Odyssey summer. And we have a brand new guest for the first time in maybe decades. Stick around.
Hey, it's Paris. You know I love sparkly things, right? Like stars. Duh. And thanks to Hilton and AutoCamp, I just slept under them. Picture me, serving looks by the fire outside my luxurious Airstream, making s'mores with the kids, while a national park is our backdrop. The great outdoors meets Hilton hospitality. That's hot. Explore all the new ways to stay at Hilton.com. Hilton for the stay.
With a major selection of the looks your kiddos love starting at just $4 in the Walmart app, a new school year means a stylish new them. Who knew? Find skater skirts and Crocs that say, I'm casual but cool. Sparkly sneakers that say, it's my classroom, you're just learning in it. And preppy polos that say, I'm the teacher's pet, even if they're mommy's menace at home. Find their favorite styles starting at just $4 in the app. The Walmart you thought you knew is now new.
This episode is brought to you by Nespresso Virtuo coffee machines. Ready to enjoy the bold flavors of barista-quality Nespresso iced coffee at home? Simply fill a glass with ice and press the brew button on your Virtuo pop machine to enjoy rich double espressos roasted to stand up even when chilled. Refreshingly bold iced coffee. Refreshingly easy to make at home. Visit Nespresso.com to shop now.
We really have been just recycling the most reliable of our friends who don't have normal day jobs who can come onto this podcast at any odd hour lately. So we're very excited to welcome brand new special guest to finish Circe and help us hit this midway point through Hot Girl Odyssey Summer. We have Rowan Hall in the studio today. Hello, Rowan.
Thank you so much. I do think I'm fairly reliable, and I try to also be fairly friend. So if you guys need me, I'm happy to tap in.
Yay. Rowan, I have written in our outline, is like my dream guest on this podcast. I'm going to quote Rowan's website. We love to read people's bios that they put on the internet here.
Oh my God.
I think it's efficient. Game designer, period. Podcaster, period. Writer, period. Actor, period. TTRPG streamer, period. If you kind of like put those things and you like didn't put a face to a name, that could also be almost me. And so it's really exciting to have Rowan here. We're either the same person in different fonts or we're really different people in the same font.
I'm so glad you said you, because I thought you were going to say a problematic white guy. Like, if you combine TTRPGs and podcasts, and like, as you were reading that, I felt my heart sink. I was like, oh God, I have a name that is the kind of gender neutral. I really got to specify that I'm not a grifter.
I would never invite you onto my podcast and compare you to a white man. That would be so violent. No, absolutely not. Rowan is really, really, really cool. And if you're wondering about the game designer component of that, Rowan designed this game called Candela Obscura for Critical Role, Darrington Press, and also has a brand new TTRPG out called Daggerheart, which is absolutely amazing. It came out like a few days ago. It's already sold out on the Critical Role website. Yeah. And Rowan is also co-host of a mythology podcast called Willing and Fable. Again, I'm going to quote your website, where they bring to light the often overlooked and underrepresented stories of men, women, and LGBTQ plus individuals challenging traditional and biased accounts of the past, which makes her the perfect guest to be joining us to discuss Circe today.
Having to write about yourself is a crime. There's no way I wrote that not in a fugue state, because like I don't remember that.
No, every now and then someone will like send me my own website bio and be like, hey, is this good for X and X thing or X and X class? And I'm like, oh God, where did you get that? Ew, no. Who wants that? But it's a thing I made that is publicly available. If you're listening to this right now, don't go to my website. It's only there because I have to have it. It's not there because I want you to see it.
I'll do your little write-up for you. I think it's good to have your friends write about you. I always send them, like now, I send them as text to friends and be like, hey, can you write about me like you love me? because I want to die.
Wow, that's beautiful. I guess the therapy thing to do would be like write about yourself as though you were a friend.
No.
Carter and I have a favorite meme from the TV show Crazy Ex-Girlfriend where the main character's best friend says, honey, just be yourself. And she says, what? Ew, no, who would want to be that? Ah! Exactly this moment. Well, anyway, Circe. Rowan, when we first met, I think you told me that Circe was your favorite book.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
In your own words, tell us about your background with this book, what it means to you when you first read it.
I think, unfortunately, when I talk about this book, I have a tendency to kind of evangelize. Like, I look like someone who's been converted, which I think is frustrating because I think I have many favorite books, and oftentimes it's the book that finds you when you need it. But I don't remember if I read Circe before I started my podcast or kind of in the beginning phases, but Madeline Miller's, like, reading her work feels simultaneously incredibly aspirational. If I could ever put words on the page like she does, I think I would die happy. And also, her writing style feels like coming home. It's very comfortable to spend time in her books. It feels like there are dozens of little dark corners to explore. And I just love the way she took the Odyssey and made it about women. And not just women, but like the woman. Circe is often called the original witch, which I think is debatable. Very debatable.
We've debated about it a little bit as well the past few weeks, what that actually means.
I'm not buying it. Like, who gets to decide what's the first and, you know, who's first? And Greek mythology, I think, when I say I have a podcast about mythology, people only ever assume it's Greek or Roman mythology because that is where the idea of mythology lives, which allows things to be the first. Because it's this kind of universal mythology that everyone has decided we can all kind of go to and excavate and have fun with. But, like, let's be so for real. You can take any mythology back to ancient Sumerian, and whoever wrote that she was the first was just not counting approximately a dozen indigenous mythologies from around the world.
Absolutely. We've also been asking people, Rowan, because there are so many themes in this book and it circles so many different ideas, like spiraling constantly around like a whirlpool of themes. What is one word you would use to describe this book as far as like, this is what this book is about for me personally?
Oh, gosh.
That's how everyone has responded to that question.
I think I have to go with weaving.
Whoa!
Ooh. We haven't had that one yet. It's been mostly human, woman,
People are too
mortality.
literal, I guess. Yeah, I feel bad now for saying something that is literally just a true statement about what the book is about instead of a important metaphor that circles through it.
What did you say?
So now, I don't remember. One of us, I think, said...
I don't remember what you said either,
No,
Carter.
on the previous recording, we also were just like, one of us said human, but which of us was it? And maybe it wasn't either
me.
of us. There's no way to
I
know.
think you said human, maybe. Our listeners would probably know. I said Bible, and we will get back to that at the end of the episode. Weaving is perfect, though. Weaving is especially perfect for the section that we have today, starting with chapter 21 and going through the end. We left Circe last week waving goodbye on the beach to her son, Telegonus. We were talking about motherhood, Deus Ex Leviathans, and this week we finally get to talk about the woman that we have been wanting to talk about and alluding to talking about for the entire time we've been talking about this book, who is Penelope. And we also get to talk about Circe's fifth and potentially final boyfriend. Maybe we should talk about the thing I am the least interested in first, so we can like get to the good stuff later, which is the end of Odysseus's life. Telegonus comes back. She's not alone on the island for very long. Like, it's maybe just a few pages before he finally returns.
Yeah, it's really brief. And the thing that okay, so I normally listen to this book because I think Perdita Weeks did an absolutely wonderful job. And I like to, when I'm standing in line for groceries, just pop it on.
That means you know how to pronounce names, which is really helpful for us.
For this podcast, obviously, I dove in and I prepped, and I had kind of in my mind that weaving was a big theme throughout this book. This is why I had this word ready. And in specific, weaving is women's work, and it's boring women's work, kind of in the spectrum of mythology. So I was looking for it, and on the first page, Miller says, just as he had picked out Daedalus's loom. So right there, from the beginning of this portion, Daedalus's loom appears. And throughout the rest of the book, the loom is mentioned, weaving is mentioned at really important and integral moments when there are emotional highs and lows. And she is trying to comfort herself about her son meeting Odysseus, and she goes to the loom. And as she is kind of preparing for her son to meet, what was it, her fourth boyfriend? She is going to this comfort of Daedalus, who was kind of her lover in a way.
We count him as third boyfriend.
He's the third boyfriend. Yeah.
He's my favorite.
Ooh! I was going to ask who everyone's... I think we talked about... Oh no, what did we do a couple days ago? We played Kiss, Marry, Avoid with all of her boyfriends.
Oh no, fifth boyfriend is my favorite. Okay,
Yeah.
Mary is fifth boyfriend, Kiss is Daedalus, and Avoid is absolutely, unabashedly Odysseus.
Yeah!
Okay.
Speaking of, he's dead. Telemachus comes back. He brings Penelope and his half-brother Telemachus with him. Ooh, awkward. They have the same name. Absolutely love the part of the book where Circe's like, I know it's embarrassing now that I named my son this, but I never thought that they were gonna meet.
Well, Telegonus means born from afar, and she acknowledges that that's kind of her joke for herself. And Telemachus means fighting from afar, which I believe is a reference to the fact that Odysseus likes to fight with bow and arrow, which is kind of a not a heroic way to fight.
Yes.
So, yikes.
And that name works out too, because Telemachus, as we come to know him, at least in this book, is not necessarily the idea of a hero that we would think of, a traditional Greek hero. Something Jenny, our guest last week, was talking about why she loves this book is because Miller is like unafraid to, quote, fill in the gaps within the myths. I think is it actually the telegony that we know this from, that Circe gives her son the poison spear that ends up accidentally killing Odysseus.
Telegony.
Yeah, telegony. I don't think we know that trigon, like all of that stuff is Miller's from my understanding.
I fell down the rabbit hole on this.
Oh my God, thank
trigon.
God. I was hoping you would be able to fill this gap in for us.
So Miller has a really great Instagram video where she talks about this, and apparently Circe going to Trigon was one of, if not the first ideas she had for this book. And it is in part to capture that idea from myth where heroes have to venture to the underworld. And Circe can't go to the underworld because she's a god. Or rather, depending, why would she, I should say. And she's stuck on this island. So she goes to the bottom of the ocean. And Trigon does not exist in mythology. It just means stingray in ancient Greek.
Got it.
So she made this cooler, more badass god for Circe to go to, which is, I think, part of her story about gods being a comment on humanity. They are what happens when we don't change, and hubris gets us, and not meeting adversaries. And Trigon is even older than the Olympians, older than the Titans, and also has this kind of preternatural calm and satisfaction. And then she comes back with this badass tale.
Yeah, that's so helpful to hear, because we spent a lot of our last episode being like, what's up with this guy? But he feels a little out of place. We don't know a lot about him. What is it that kind of unsettles us about this character? And knowing that it's kind of a stand-in for going to the underworld makes so much sense to my brain.
It also eventually shows the difference between her and her father Helios, because he will not risk pain or ending. And Circe puts him to the test there, and Circe will do those things. So Trigon kind of serves as this ultimate allegory for outdoing, showing that the bravery kind of outdoes godhood, I think, in some ways.
It's such an interesting choice for Odysseus to die at the hands of, in a sense, his son, but mostly from his own fatal flaw in this book, as opposed to the like peaceful death in old age, which is that what happens in the Odyssey, that he does end up making it home?
Odyssey gets there.
It just doesn't make it.
Yeah. The brief Google that I did prior to this suggests that a lot of scholars believe that the telegony was sort of paired with all of these things, that there were stories that were told together. But unlike the Odyssey, there aren't surviving versions of it in the same way. Like, obviously, there are many different translations of the Odyssey. There's maybe like not 100% agreement about what the text of it is, but there's nothing even close to that for the Telegony. But we have ideas about what happens. And primarily it is about Telegonus going off, killing his father, and then coming back and marrying Penelope while Circe marries Telemachus.
Wife swap.
Some of that happens, obviously, in this book, and some of it doesn't. But
don't they also get Circe to revive the corpse of Odysseus in the Telegony?
Yeah, this is showing that like the myth lies in the storyteller. I've always favored the version where Odysseus succumbs to his own hubris, and then also I'm not a huge fan of Odysseus being risen as a corpse, so I just deleted that.
He isn't Jesus. Circe is Jesus, and I will raise my corpse on that hill. The best part about this is that Penelope and Telemachus come with Telegonus, and Circe is very on guard about their presence on the island at first, because she thinks the only reason they could be there is for vengeance, because that is what is expected of the hero, that Telemachus is like vowed to avenge his father. And so she is so cautious of the two of them. And she even like, at first, the way that she describes Penelope feels to me like the way she was describing Medea, like this like cloaked figure. We don't know what her intentions are, but there's this like sense of danger until eventually that falls away, because she realizes that they don't care about that they had a complex relationship with Odysseus. And it's that surprise for me, that way that Telemachus's behavior and his intentions surprise her from the norm, that when I was first reading this book, I was like, oh, that's her fifth boyfriend. He's coming. Because she consistently loves this like surprise. She loves how she gets to surprise Hermes. She loves seeing the surprise on Daedalus's face and all of that. And in this instance, this is the man who is surprising her and making her think differently about what a human can be and what a hero can be.
When you live forever, the surprise is decency.
Oh no. This feels like a direct comment on the Odyssey, because so many of the men who went to Troy, their lives were defined by a vow. They vowed to show up for whoever got Helen. And whether they liked it or not, they went. And in fact, there are many stories about people not liking it and still having to go. And here we have Penelope and Telemachus saying, by the laws of the Greeks, I should kill your son because he killed my father. And they are saying, I will not have my life defined or ruined by a vow.
Yeah.
Which is part of that myth made out of almost anti-myth.
Yeah, and I like that that's sort of like a rejecting of the traditional idea of a hero, which is also like in a sense a rejecting of the Greek culture, which I wanted to talk about like eventually with Telemachus and that relationship, that she is able to find love and partnership in a way that for her does not feel like entrapment, because that kind of love and partnership is still something that exists outside of this like societal Greek norm of the time, in the way that they go off and like live their romance together and like a study abroad trip, and they like travel all around and they don't traditionally get married.
That is a wild way to describe the way that this book basically ends, as a study abroad trip.
Is it not her study abroad gap year?
I guess. Parenthesis positive. Not in a draggy way. I mean that in a, you better backpack across Europe with your fifth boyfriend.
It's not her gap year.
I understand.
Yeah. Before we get to fifth boyfriend, like for real territory, we do have to say goodbye to Telegonus, because Athena comes back and says, I'm taken, Telemachus. Telemachus says, not only do I not care about avenging my father, I don't care about glory. I'm not about the kleos. All I care about is the nostos. I want to live a happy domestic life. This surprises Circe so much, and she probably should have seen it coming, but she didn't, that Telegonus is going to make the decision to go with Athena. Isn't it so disappointing when you have a straight son?
Oh, yeah.
Well, actually, he's not straight.
True!
Canonically. Telegonus is canonically queer.
There's that great line in the previous section of chapters that we talked about where Circe's like, boys and girls are going to be fawning over him.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, his queerness is kind of how he flips the bird to Athena in some ways. I believe Telegonus, it is very hinted at that he loves his captain of the guard later in life and doesn't have heirs. And that is the thing that Athena wanted from this son of Odysseus, is more children. I have beef with Athena. I have long-standing beef with Athena.
Speak on it.
I hate this bitch. She is the beep worst. I hate her for how she treats Medusa. I hate her for how she treats Arachne. She always puts other women down to build herself up. And Miller said, I understand the assignment. I love what she did with Athena in this book. She is not a girl's girl.
At all.
She has made Circe's life hell for so long. And specifically puts Circe in the position of being beholden to the future eventual behavior of a man. Her son, in this case. But she is not a girl's girl.
At all. Yeah.
No. Athena, I love her because I hate her.
Yeah. We love to hate her. This is a shout out to the great Daphne Olive, that if every story kind of ends with like blame Zeus, like Zeus is the root of all problems, Athena is such a great stand-in for Zeus here, not only as his progeny, but also the way that she is described consistently in her appearances in this book as being so Zeus-like, coming down like a lightning bolt, crackling with electricity, being gray and stormy and all of that. She might as well be him.
She writes of Athena, her favorite could never be allowed to grow dull and domestic. He must live in action's eye. So Athena is part of this idea of a hero.
Yeah.
The striving, the storytelling, the fighting. And Circe is very much a story of the heroics of just living an everyday good life and trying to make the world a little better. And that's why we love Fifth Boyfriend. And that's why we hate Athena.
Yeah. The amount of hammering over the head we get from the Telemachus versus Athena dialogue, there are like so few works that I think are willing to be this direct and repeated and blunt about this particular set of trade-offs. The only thing that I could compare it to is the ending of Pippin, where they're literally like tearing down the stage around them, and
yeah, like the structure that you were working within this whole time, it doesn't exist for me. Like, we're going to dismantle the framework that we were thinking about the whole time and say that's actually not.
Yeah, like somebody just saying like, I like the thing that we've been talking about this whole time doesn't appeal to me, and then the original person having the only response being just increasing levels of anger and confusion and actual like conceptual disjointness, inability to comprehend what's going on. Yeah.
Wow. I love Pippin being mentioned before we finish this book. What a great like non-linear quest story to compare the Odyssey to.
I'm realizing I'm not familiar enough with Pippin and I need to up my game.
The ending of Pippin, we're going to spoil Pippin briefly, is that the... are we not? Should we not spoil Pippin?
Spoil Pippin. It's been
Pippin, the musical from the 1970s.
Like Pippin, oh my God, Stephen Schwartz's first and best musical.
I can never remember if he wrote Godspell or Pippin first, but they were very...
Yeah. Like both like vaguely college projects. Basically, like the point of Pippin is he meets all these people, and at the end, it's suggested that the point of all of this was that he should kill himself in a fire to put on a good show. And that is the grandest possible version of life. And he says, no, actually, I want to go live on a farm with my girlfriend and stepson. And then they deconstruct the production around him and run away and basically say, like, you lose the theater. Like your life will be garbage after this. And most of like, there's like maybe 5 minutes of the ringmaster of the circus basically just saying, we'll take the lights. We'll take like going down the list and being like, I'm going to remove this from you. I'm going to take this. This is why your life is going to suck. This is worthless. And Pippin just kind of standing there as this person is kind of crashing out.
I love that.
Excellent comparison, Carter. The more I think about Patina Miller in particular, because the revival doing that, the more I think about Athena.
I don't know how much of this I'm referring to as the revival versus the original. That's really embarrassing for me. That I don't know about what Ben did, but...
No.
You're thinking of the staging of the revival, but that is the script.
I didn't... Okay, I need to watch a slime tutorial of Pippin, I guess. No, but the Pippin comparison is awesome because Athena appearing is such a prime example of this battle that Circe has and eventually Telemachus has of wanting to choose the plain, quote, boring life. Mm-hmm. And also how storytelling fits into that. And one of my favorite things that Miller does before Athena appears is she has Circe go through all of the stories that she's been involved in of Odysseus and Aeetes and Scylla.
Yeah.
And she says, I had not wanted my history to be only an amusement, grist for his relentless intelligence, but who else would have tolerated it with all its ugliness and errors? I have missed my chance to speak, and now it is too late. And she's talking about Odysseus, that the only person who could understand how horrible she is someone who also committed horrible acts.
Mm-hmm.
And she let her moment go, and this god that made Odysseus in some ways who he was is coming.
Mm-hmm.
And then, boyfriend number 5 says, I don't want it. And when Athena asks, God, what does she say? She says, oh, has some other god offered you something better? Not yet.
Hey! That's the kicker. It's that, like, to the end, her analysis is unidimensional. In some ways, it, like, makes her a really, I think, precise, compelling villain, because it's a classic story of, like, not understanding the humanity and the heart of all of this. I think it's also interesting in that it, like, really is cluing us into, like, what dimension. I think that there's, like, a roughly 2-dimensional map of the situation that we're looking at. I'm, like, showing the Cartesian plane to the other 2 people in this conversation with me, even though we're making an audio product. But like, okay, we definitely have that dimension that she's focused on, which is sort of glory, grandness, heroics versus plain,
Kleos.
boring, steady, reliable.
Nostos.
I think those are roughly the 2 ends of this. But then, like, something that we talk about a lot in these other conversations, and that I think Telemachus, I feel like in his conversation is more directly focused on, although he also mentions that first axis, is the axis of basically ethics, I think, for lack of a better word.
He is kind of one of the first people who even brings that to mind.
Most of these people, like, it doesn't occur to them as one of the dimensions of analysis, but he kind of rounds out his first kind of get to know you, I'm not here to kill your son chat with Circe by talking about all the horrible things he's done and laying that out as the framework through which he sees the world. Like, my father was bad, partially because he was too focused on glory and didn't spend enough time with us, but also just because the things he did in his life were bad. He made a lot of other people's lives worse. And so it's good that he's gone, what have you. And I feel like Athena, it's not even just that she's, like, an immoral person along these axes. She is. And there seems to be a lot of clustering and, like, reduction of the 2 axes roughly into the one. But, like, she doesn't even talk about that. That's,
well,
like,
power
so...
trumps ethics for her, I think.
Exactly. It's, like, not on her radar. Yeah.
That's such an interesting point. I mean, Circe talks about ethics from the beginning of the book. Prometheus kind of highlights that. She talks a lot about ethics with Daedalus, who is torn up by the way his inventions have been used. Hermes is obviously falling in the Athena camp.
Yes.
Odysseus kind of does muse over things that he's done, but falls into the converted hero. Power is its own ethos.
He, like, understands the ethical dimension, but he just doesn't care.
I feel like I'm missing a boyfriend.
Glaucus.
The worst one.
First ones don't count.
Glaucus, who does not see anything particularly.
He's just a wet paper
towel. And you
towel.
know he wasn't that pretty. I'm sorry, if you're going to be that crappy, you have to bring something to the table.
I know in my spirit that he was just the only one physically around. And sometimes that is what it takes.
Well, he worships her.
Yeah.
That's her first experience not being treated like dirt, which is a formative experience for every guy.
It is a first boyfriend experience, yes.
I do like that we are, like, with Telemachus, we are kind of doing a return to form of Daedalus in the sense of somebody who actually cares about morality that we maybe didn't prioritize as much with our 4th boyfriend, because our 4th boyfriend was kind of a little bit of a trauma rebound, and that was not necessarily important to her in that moment.
I love Daedalus. I love that he looms over this book because
literally looms. He looms.
Oh no. I didn't mean to do that. Oh, that's even worse. Oh no. Because he's a craftsperson, and all of Circe's magic and power is about craft. And Daedalus is a craftsman. He's a maker, and he changes the world with his craft. And we see him loom with his loom. And we see echoes of him appearing again in Penelope because she is a crafts person.
Yeah.
And then we see the prow spirit, which is Telemachus. And it's a whisper of Daedalus carrying back. He is kind of somewhat of a North Star in this. Don't they always say you have 3 loves? This is bullshit, but they say it anyway. They, like the powers that be, say you have your 3 loves. Your first one, bad. You learn a lot. Second one, okay, middle. And then the third one's going to be like the one. I think Circe gets extras because she's
immortal.
Yeah.
Right. So if it's 3 in my head, it's Daedalus, Odysseus, Telemachus.
Yeah, because Hermes doesn't count and first ones don't count either. I like that. Also, I like the idea that Daedalus, I just feel like he is so similar to Telemachus, and that Daedalus was like a little bit older than her, like quote unquote. I mean, she's immortal, right? But he's like a little bit more older presenting from her at the time that they meet. And that he's almost like, I think that he is the one who starts to kind of like fix her daddy issues a little bit by like attentiveness that he gives her and like the steadiness that he provides that was not present with Bacchus and Hermes. And so like,
I've never thought about Circe in relation to daddy issues.
Oh,
no.
We've been talking about it.
No, darn. I hate that so much.
Especially for this last section. That's like that's like such a huge part of the rounding out of this book. She doesn't reconfront Odysseus. She doesn't reconfront Hermes. She kind of does, I guess a little bit. He's the one who heralds Athena. But like really the button on all of this is talking to Helios that one last time.
No, it's so obvious. I've just always thought about it in kind of a heady way of, her conflict with her father. Because daddy issues often feels like it's referencing you have issues with your daddy, even though the reality of the situation is your daddy has issues.
Your father has issues.
Now you have to deal with them.
Well, I think, how speaking of they, right. What they say, that you always date a partner who like exhibits trait, like your soulmate exhibits traits of your ex-parent. And if we kind of abandon Helios and think of Daedalus as more of our father figure, I love the idea of Telemachus like having the traits of Daedalus that is like healing in her, that like patience and the idea of being like a craftsperson who wants to live a quiet life, and all of that like looms her 5th and final relationship, and also her relationship with, she's always comparing Odysseus and Daedalus.
Yeah, no, that's it. I think Daedalus is kind of weirdly like between the two of them if you were to map them into some sort of space.
Carter, you're such a woman in STEM. You keep wanting to
wanting to make a chart. I keep wanting to do like a top 2 PCA reduction of like the traits of these people.
I don't know what that means.
I love a woman in STEM.
So like, okay, like basically Daedalus he's similar to Telemachus in the sense that they are both people who care about being ethical in their work and also not being like a dumb deadbeat to Circe interpersonally. Like they're the only ones who are actually trying to communicate reasonably with her and set expectations verbally and reasonably and realistically. But like I don't know. I feel like this is maybe teasing out this 2-axis like ethics glory thing where Daedalus's issue is that he is trying to be ethical but doesn't because he's just too. I don't know. I think it's kind of like a no ethical consumption under capitalism situation where like he's too influential. He's too like embroiled in the ways of the world, and that makes him like he's too of the world, which is why he doesn't have the relationship with Circe. Like he's stuck in this metropolitan capital creating these terrible war crimes against his will. And I don't know. Do we feel like that's like the trade-off that's being presented, that it in fact is these things being bound up together, that Telemachus is only able to be the right partner because he isn't like ambitious, low-key?
Okay, I'm going to push on this, and I will say that a considerable amount of this might be born of the fact that I super don't want this book to be able to be chalked up into daddy issues. So I do want to be so for real that there is some personal comforting that is happening right now. However, I think I have evidence to back it up. I think a lot of this book is about Circe fighting against eternity and the idea of a hero. And the idea of a hero and the eternity, constancy of gods is linked together. These are the peoples we tell stories about. And
Mm-hmm.
the first instance of that in her life is Helios. She's born a Titan. She's with the Titans. The first person she sees pushing back on that is Prometheus.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Yes.
A man. Noteworthy.
Yeah.
Yes.
Then we have this kind of journey for her where she interacts with Pasiphae and with Scylla. And there is a really interesting story happening about how women deal with patriarchy.
Mm-hmm.
And in this case, patriarchy is like heroes and gods. And Scylla deals with it by becoming a monster. And Pasiphae is awful to other people.
Yeah.
And we see Daedalus, who's trapped in this kind of, do I want to be a hero? Do I want to be whatever, a maker kind of place? And as we go through, we get the Medea. Like, I am pushing against patriarchy and I'm put in a bad situation. And maybe this is the best I can do, or maybe I've been made into a monster. We have Penelope, who's a woman who's also pushing back against patriarchy in this like quiet, tender way. We have the Odysseus. We have even her son, who are like, no, patriarchy fuels me. I want to be someone for whom stories are written. And these women are constantly having to adjust like sails to deal with these men. And while Helios is the first and the last, I think instead of daddy issues, I want it to be like a story about what we call heroic and how women interact with patriarchy. And damn it can't be daddy issues.
No, I totally see that. That like part of what we're seeing is this mortality thing. It is like somebody who wants to be forever or somebody who wants to be a story versus somebody who is willing to make the sacrifices necessary to live a good life, which means not being the story. And that those two things are like really linked for the book.
Which I'm so sorry if this ruins everything we've just said, but which is why I think daddy issues is what it translates to, is because Helios is the Titan and is her father. And like he, as a father, quote unquote, all he's not representing the father-daughter relationship as much as what he represents is immortality. He is the Titan. Like her saying no to him, like her at first kind of like bowing down to him and sitting at his feet was her just accepting and playing into society, Greek culture, the gods, the idea of heroism, the idea of power above all else. And then her rejecting him and learning to reject him is rejecting immortality and the Titans and the Greeks. Like, I think that he just is the stand-in for that, because at the end, like, she needs to put her foot down at someone in particular, and it doesn't end up being Athena. So it ends up being Helios, who was like here the entire time, like has been that figure in her life the whole time.
It literally goes together.
Well, Athena is our woman who bought into, in this case, immortality. She's a god, but also patriarchy.
Yeah.
All I ever talk about is how Athena is an exceptional woman. She like keeps other women down. She
really broke those glass ceilings.
Sure. And then turned all the glass into knives.
Yeah.
Period.
I think Miller does a really great job of capping this heroes and stories theme at the end by having Circe really grapple with not wanting to tell stories about herself, the stories where she feels like she was a monster. Because the person who tells the story controls the narrative.
Yes.
The better the story you tell, the more correct you are. We are living in that hell. And sometimes it's beautiful and cool. And sometimes it's awful. Fake news is going to be the death of reason, if it's not already. But she does not want to tell stories about herself, because if other people say she's a monster, she can say that's not true. I wouldn't say it that way. But if she tells the story and someone looks at her and says, you are a monster, then she is part of making that story. And so when she gets Telemachus and she holds these things close and she tells him, and he doesn't look at her and say, that's a good story. Or, no, honey, you were in the right. He just says, okay, I can withstand that. I am constant and I love you. And then she starts to tell the stories where she was victimized or where she was afraid, and the things that changed her life and wrapped her up in kind of the ugliness and the fear, operating from a place of fear as this witch of Aiaia. And he again goes, okay, I can withstand this, and I am here for you. And she is able to then step into a place where she controls the stories. There are stories being told about her to someone who loves her. And that person, instead of saying, I'm going to go far and wide and I'm going to tell generation upon generation about you, goes, okay, now what if we go live our lives? And what if the stories about the Witch of Aiaya are now about my mom? And we can just go be safe on our gap year.
Yeah.
It hurts.
That is the
It hurts
wildest
me.
part of it that I didn't think that much about the first time I read the book, was the idea that there are people who have experienced Penelope and don't know that like we're supposed to understand this as some sort of like secret retroactive history, and that several of the terrors of Circe were actually things where she wasn't there. She like went off, lived her life, died presumably, and left another person to just
Be the witch.
wear the cape. Yeah.
I love it so much.
I want to continue to echo what Rowan said and what Carter said about the shedding of the stage at the end of Pippin that is Telemachus.
Pippin is Circe.
Pippin is
confirmed.
Circe, at the ending at least, that is Telemachus not being a storyteller. There are so many excellent quotes in this section of her being like, whoa, he's not much of a storyteller. He's very blunt. She says, it was a shock to hear such blunt words put into Odysseus's mouth, as Telemachus is describing the things that his father said. But she says, there was a piece of me that wanted to object, say that didn't sound like him, but how many times had I heard him praise such tactics? The only difference was how plainly Telemachus told it. And then she said, I had been watching him as he talked for his father's mannerisms, those tricks that were as indivisible from Odysseus as tides from the ocean, the pauses and smiles, the dry voice and deprecating gestures, all wielded against the listener, to convince, to tease, and most of all to mitigate. I had seen none. Telemachus took his blow straight on. And she says, his eyes were Odysseus's, the shape and the color, even the intensity. But the expression, Odysseus's gaze was always reaching out, cajoling. Telemachus held fast to itself. He completely tears down the structure that Odysseus represents as the stories, as the songs of the bards, and is like, I don't want to participate in that. This is the story, the end. And we can reject those stories. Like, as she chooses him, she is essentially rejecting that storytelling and saying, we're just going to live outside of it. And then we literally live outside of it by leaving.
One of the things that Madeline Miller has talked about in writing this book was wanting to show men and how they were raised by women. And how that influenced them, because in Greek mythology, it's always guy, son of other guy. And so showing that the reality that Telemachus was with his mom the whole time and would have been very much her son. This comes from, I forget which source Madeline Miller cited, but there is a myth where Telegonus, as an adult, when he goes off to Italy, is introduced, I believe, as Telegonus Aiaios.
Whoa.
But it's Telegonus, son of Circe.
Yeah.
Nice.
And so she is being put above Odysseus. And in every other instance, I mean, come on, Odysseus is the guy from Greek mythology.
Best of the Greeks.
Like, how far did you guys go in life before you learned that Troy was a fake war? Because I thought
maybe
it was
a couple
real
years
war.
ago. Maybe a couple years ago.
Yeah, I remember learning that and going, hold the phone.
Let's go to Penelope. That was a great segue into Penelope. Men being raised by their women. This woman is everything. I had a couple questions I wanted to ask to the gallery. There's two questions that we've been like keeping volleyed up in the air for when we got to Penelope. And the first one is, should they have just been girlfriends? Would it have satisfied us if Circe, at the end of the day, hadn't had chosen Telemachus, but had just chosen Penelope? If Penelope and Circe had smooched at the end of this book, was that is an ending that is a within the realm of what people desire. And now that she's here, I do think we can dedicate 30 seconds at least to talking about, should Penelope and Circe just have been girlfriends?
I have a lot of thoughts about this, so Carter, I want to let you go first so that I don't just steamroll over.
I think that if I were Circe, which is a multifaceted hypothetical in the situation that I'm not sure really holds up, but if you'll allow me, if I was Circe, I think I would have tried to go with Penelope. I think that is the correct answer I would have sought out. However, I think as a reader, if I had seen that, I don't know. I think I would have felt that it was too convenient, too neat, too, I don't know. It doesn't feel like the story she's been going on with all the boyfriends, even though I feel like, to me, Penelope strikes me as a much more interesting part partner for Circe in a lot of ways, but not one who's going to heal all of the issues that she's been building up over millennia and such.
Oh, that's a really good point.
Like, Penelope isn't like an antidote to Odysseus. Penelope kind of like is Odysseus, but less toxic because she hasn't been socialized as a man.
They talk about how they used to conspire. She talks about how they used to conspire together, and he extols her virtues.
Yeah, and that like part of the nature of their partnership was that she was his sort of intellectual peer. Like she was a confidant because she could understand his thinking, not just kind of like in a horsepower way, but in a framework way. All of which is to say that I think that like to me, like less toxic Odysseus sounds like a great log line for the potential partner in life, but maybe not the right story arc for her.
That's such a good point. I don't think I had framed her as a less toxic Odysseus in a love interest sense. But it does give credit to Odysseus in that he did respect women to the amount that I supposed his personality allowed.
There's like a specific brand of respecting women that he falls into, which is like you can be a close collaborator. Like if you're on my team, we can make this work, but also I'm gonna cheat on you and like do all these other things.
He seems like that guy that is comfortable saying about women, you know, you are my equal, but not in the same places. Like you're good, but not in the areas where I'm good.
Yeah.
You know, you have amazing witchcraft and I go out and win wars. And power-wise, we're probably equals, but it's not the same. Like separate but equal. Patriarchy
yeah, you have really
edition.
great emotional intelligence.
Yeah. Okay, so I love your point about Penelope. That's a super solid flag. I think from a like joking, do I always want the women to kiss? Like, would I feel comfortable blanket saying that? I mean, I guess. I think that could be fun. But a lot of things, kind of like you said, Carter, that are fun, do not a good story make. At me and women I have been with.
Oh.
But I really agree that the story that Madeline Miller is telling is that, one, anyone could be a witch if they have the will. We do get to that point that had been built up for a minute, where eventually Penelope says, she smiled her inward smile, you were right, it is mostly will and work. And at that point, she has done magic. And I would say even arguably before that point, she was a witch, because being a witch is being a woman that has power in an inconvenient way. And so when she becomes the woman of Aiaia, when Circe leaves the first time, she's a witch. Maybe she hasn't figured out the spellcraft yet. So could they have kissed? I guess, but it's not as good a story. And I talk about this. We did, I think, a 2-part episode on Achilles and Patroclus. And I think in my reading, they were a queer couple. Clearly, Madeline Miller wrote a really beautiful book about them being a couple. But I do think there is an equally valuable reading of their story that is about how men could have emotionally intimate relationships that are not about romance if they wanted to. So I don't think she needs to be queer in this story to do the thing. Do I think Circe, living on this island for hundreds of years, maybe should have hooked up with, I guess, a nymph?
The nymphs.
I don't know. They're all
At
kind of
some
described
point.
like little babies, but like an adult nymph.
A consenting nymph of the right age.
Yeah. But also, the story doesn't acknowledge that because maybe she doesn't, it's not valuable. Like, there is an amount of kind of general queerness for men in just Greek life. Greek life? No, sorry. Ancient Greek history.
Wow.
There's a certain amount of queerness that is not noteworthy. So it would make sense that if Madeline Miller is trying to flip mythology on its head, that there is a light queerness for Circe. But she doesn't do that. And I actually really like that, because I have a pet peeve about modern retellings of myths where we force a perspective onto it that the story cannot bear.
Yes.
I think lots of stories can handle those things and it's fun. And, you know, we can be like, oh, this is modern and I've reinterpreted these characters. And then sometimes people do it and it grinds against what the story is asking for.
Yes. Yeah.
But maybe they could have kissed anyway. Just like a
little one. Just a little one. No, kiss. Just
a little smooch.
I could not stop thinking about during this last reread I did of this section was the Eliza Hamilton paradigm. Circe speaks when she becomes more friends with Penelope about the kind of woman she is and like coming to know the woman that Odysseus would always tell these stories about. That she is stoic, and it is through stoicism that she is able to survive all of these years. It's a matter of keeping very still, showing no emotions, leaving room for others to reveal themselves. I remember what Odysseus had said about her once, that she never went astray, never made an error. I had been jealous then. Now I thought, what a burden, what an ugly weight upon your back.
I highlighted that quote too.
Ugly, horrible.
So
So much to say about women, right? And women who live within society to be able to survive. But also it just kept bringing back to mind for me Eliza Hamilton as like wife. I mean, and I'm talking about Hamilton the musical here, not necessarily the historical figure. But Eliza Hamilton as a fictional character within Hamilton the musical, being famous wife to very strange and man of many turnings. And how the ending of Hamilton is so difficult with Eliza putting herself back into the narrative, and how it's a critique a lot of people will have about the end. Wow, we're really talking about the ends of famous musicals here today.
I like it.
But a common critique of the end of Hamilton, it's like, why is she, not from a historical perspective, but from a storytelling standpoint, how is she putting herself back into the narrative? And personally, I think that depends on how effective you feel It's Quiet Uptown as a song is. I think it's pretty effective. But Eliza Hamilton putting herself back in the narrative, that is the opposite of what Penelope does here. And if you don't love the ending of Hamilton, I think this is like your satisfactory release to what if instead of putting yourself back into the narrative after this man wronged you, you take yourself completely out of it and you stay so far out of it that you change identities and go to live on a deserted island in the middle of the ocean and become a witch.
The other quote that I really love about Penelope was, her voice was matter of fact, loyal, songs called her, faithful and true and prudent, such passive pale words for what she was. She could have taken another husband, born another child while Odysseus was gone. Her life would have been easier for it, but she had loved him fiercely and would accept no other. Like, I love that Circe flags what a bummer it is to be framed in relation to your husband.
Yeah.
When that was such a valiant effort. She probably would have been safer.
Yes.
If she'd married another man. And if I was going to put queerness onto Penelope that is maybe definitely not super supported by what we have in history, because there's not a lot about Penelope, I'd make her a sexual icon, Penelope. Like, I'm smart. I want to marry this brilliant man.
Yeah.
I do want to have a child. I want, like, all intellectual, I'm not here for any of this folly, Penelope. If I had to pick, I don't want to.
Yeah. Circe's attempts to sort of recontextualize, reinterpret Penelope are fascinating. I like, they're not all successful. Like, there's certainly some very bizarre moments, and a lot of it begins very much through the lens of Odysseus. I think that like her initial way of getting into Penelope as a person is through Odysseus' stories, number one, but also through analogy to Odysseus. Not saying that they're the same, but this like less toxic Odysseus idea that like as his intellectual partner, that like that is sort of the leg she has into the way that Penelope thinks and the value that she has and what makes her special, which is really tough, and I think complicates this whole broader conversation about like when, if ever, is and can Circe
This
be
is
a
what I wanted
girl's
to ask
girl,
you, Carter.
and what are the preconditions that get her there? Because like I think that like Penelope is, how would you say, like Penelope as Circe's girl's girl is the same idea to me as like the idea of Hillary Clinton hypothetically having been the first female president. Do you know what I mean?
What? I'm in, but tell me.
Blind agree.
Like that it is a deal and it is something that has a lot to do with gender, but also it must be noted very prominently that we had a strong relationship with a husband first, and that is part of the way that we're making our way into this sort of, I don't know, that like even if we stop talking about it at a certain point, that like as the entry point and the structure that allows us to step in and understand this person is like so tied to the husband.
I thought you were going to say it's not about the emails. And I was going to be like, yes, Circe and Penelope would both agree that it's not about the emails. But you're such a master at seeing the way this book relates to other things. You surprised me, and I'm glad I bought in before you explained it, because I'm so bought in.
I was gonna ask, this was my other question I wanted to ask about now that we're finally at Penelope, Rowan, is that like Carter brought this thing up a few episodes ago about how Circe cannot get along with other women and like really struggles to connect with other women consistently throughout the book. And we would say, but what about Penelope? Like we kept bringing up like, but Penelope, I think, changes that. But I do see what you're saying, Carter, that she has a strong relationship first with Odysseus that allows her in.
Which is not to diminish the value of the relationship that she does have with Penelope, which is obviously complex and has many layers because Penelope has so much other stuff going on. But in terms of the entry point and what it's saying about Circe is maybe...
Well, I think that's fair. And it's conveniently illustrated with the loom, because she says weaving in another woman's loom is like lying with her husband. And so she keeps pointing back to Penelope's relation to Odysseus, because that is how she has known this woman, as she has been told to her by a man, which I love. As the fear wears off, she then gets to become reacquainted with Penelope. I would say, in my reading, I thought that Circe was the friend and kind of ally that she would have wished she had. She really supports Penelope. She says, oh no, I'm sorry, I can't undo the spell for 3 days.
Yeah.
And she also listens to her and lets her weave at the loom and all sorts of different things. Even when she clearly was afraid of how Penelope would act and maybe even didn't like her. Maybe not full negative, I hate you, but definitely didn't like her yet.
Yeah.
You could see the respect that Circe had for Penelope.
Yeah.
And when I think about this book and Circe's relationship with women throughout, I try to keep in mind that this is told from Circe's perspective. And there is an evolution in the way that she tells the story. She does have kind of an adolescent view of Pasiphae in their youth and Scylla. And it evolves over time. We see peaks of her development in how she interacts with Ariadne. I wouldn't necessarily say, though, that she's terrible to other women if we believe that Circe is telling the truth of how she was treated. Because Pasiphae and Scylla and all of the nymphs range from being awful to her to gossipy, icky.
No, I think this is right. It's like less of like an ethical judgment that Circe should have been different to them. It's not that. It is potentially a just like relational statement that like Circe doesn't have like a close relationship with a woman until this point. And mostly it is because of these other extenuating factors from the baggage that the other women are bringing in, pre-existing notions about patriarchy.
And I also want to say that I've been thinking about this because I really didn't want this to be the case for this book. I've been thinking about how can I read into all of these relationships so that it isn't the case that Circe just can't get along with other girls. And I feel like she can't get along with anybody. I think the answer is she can't get along with anybody. She doesn't get along with anybody. Sleeping with a guy and hooking up with Hermes doesn't mean they got along. Like, I don't think she got along with Glaucus. I think she was hallucinating. I don't think that she necessarily was that close with Odysseus because nobody could truly know him laid bare, as she said. Okay, I think she and Daedalus were friends, but that was a short-lived thing, and he stood in for her father, blah, 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 blah. So I think that her, like, ultimately, like, truly connecting with Telemachus, I would love to remove gender from it, even though I know you can't, but I would like to remove gender from it and say that she just struggles to connect with people in general, and she is given more opportunities to connect with men because the people who show up to her island consistently are men.
Well, the further she gets from divinity and the closer to mortality, the more she connects.
That's so
Also
true.
That's true.
I love that. I love that. Yeah. So I'm going to say it's not that she can't connect with women. It's just the circumstances.
I'm glad you said that because I was sitting here thinking, you know, is she not connecting or do the people just suck? And I'm a Circe stan, so that's biased.
Well, I mean, like, it was also less of like a statement about Circe, like, as a character. It was more of like me thinking about like Madeline Miller and story structure and like what women do you need to interact Circe with and under what conditions to create the project of Circe being like a feminist figure, but also one who is a good protagonist under modern ethical ideas. And like a lot of that work is done through this oppositional play of her against all of these other women who I think have like similar historical tellings. Like I think like the historic demonization of people like Pasiphae and Medea is similar to the historic demonization of Circe. And like it is through this oppositional juxtaposition that we get Circe, I think, on her way.
Miller calls it out in the book, and then in interviews she says, you know, women are just there to either be foils for men, breeding stock. They don't have personalities. So I think you hit the nail on the head there. Okay, this is on me. I think I've been really sleeping on her mom in all of this. Because Circe's mom famously manipulates her father.
Yes.
And also doesn't say anything at times that maybe Circe wished she would. And so we get a Penelope walking in who, professional manipulator, full credit to her.
Yes.
And also is frequently silent when Circe is interior, like, bristling and bumping against it. So there might be a little, I just needed to not be daddy issues, so I'm like, mommy issues.
No, I think that is very right. That she reads her mom's way of navigating the world as a woman as her sort of her prior onto every woman. Yeah. She does it onto Pasiphae. Medea down. Yeah. Like basically all the nymphs, she kind of is making these assumptions based on her mother's strategy of trying to be a good wife, trying to bear lots of children. Yes, yeah.
I love the nymphs.
God forbid a girl gets her nails done. Like, doesn't mean that Circe can't be friends with them. But I like the idea that it's because of her difficult relationship with her mother and not some kind of like innate anti-femininity thing.
Well, I love the nymphs because they're such a comment on surviving under patriarchy.
Yes.
And the best oppressor is the person who is next on the ladder.
Yeah.
To the person who has the most power. And so all of the nymphs that have the game on lock, like, my only job is to be sexy, look down on Circe and say, I can punch down to you. And she has to deal with those repercussions. And yes, there is a feminist take that's like, you do get to do your nails. And how far can you go with femininity before you're only pleasing men? Is it just for you? Like the classic makeup, hair, whatever question. But you cannot divorce the fact that they are performing and very likely have those likes because it feels better to like the thing you have to do. Like, it's nice to be able to be like, no, I like being sexy and available sitting by this lake for whenever the gods deign to come. Because otherwise you're still sitting there and it hurts. And Circe is not very compassionate towards the nymphs because they're crummy to her. And I don't think she has the emotional bandwidth to bear their hurts. And I think, like, as people, I'm not bearing the pain of a bunch of nymphs. I'm only bearing the pain of the named characters in my life.
Final answer, some girls are mean. Final answer, some girls are mean.
Wait, I think the related thing that we should get to that I think will actually close us out very nicely and completely is the weaving piece.
So good, Carter.
Not just because it's the word that you started off with, but because that I think is like of a part of it. Like when we first get Circe, like Circe getting the loom happens in the same section as Circe having her big confrontation with Pasiphae where she's like, whoa, do I understand women at all? I think I still hate this one woman. What's going on?
I like the idea of closing on a weaving because another conversation that we had that I wanted to get back to for this last section was, is it weird to us that it's Daedalus's loom and that Circe repeatedly says she's not actually very good of a weaver? It's all because of the magic of the loom that she was given by her third boyfriend. I think that's something that can be bristly at first, but I really like the idea that as Penelope, as Madeline Miller says, is taking on this role of the Witch of Aiaia, that part of the myth had nothing to do with Circe. That like that part of this like idea of Circe as being a weaver of spells and a weaver of cloth is actually the Penelope portion of the witch and not the Circe portion of the witch, as they are like smushed into one person by the songs.
Well, I love that Daedalus gave her a magical loom because I think that part of the story is one craftsperson to another. I see you.
A fiber artist to a fiber artist.
I know that you're bored, maybe, even. But I think Miller, in including the loom in all of these points, is really showing off how much she knows about Greek mythology in this beautiful way, because that is women's work. And I think probably the most accessible example of that a lot of people know is Arachne and Athena.
Yeah.
Arachne is a weaver and says, I'm the best. And then Athena comes down to ruin her life. And that's the only, maybe not the only, but one of the few times that weaving appears as a really proper aspect of a myth.
And there's an actual direct line where Circe describes Penelope as looking like she's being clothed in spider silk. If you weren't already thinking of Arachne, I think that by saying spider silk, Madeline Miller is directly evoking the only other story about women in weaving.
Yes, there's a couple really beautiful allusions. In the last chapter, she alludes to the double-double toil and trouble speech from Macbeth. It's brilliant. I'm trying to find the last mention of weaving in the book, because I would love to know. Oh, okay. It's on, I believe it's on page 373. It is when she says, Scylla was not born a monster, I made her. And Telemachus asks how. It goes, there was a piece of me that shouted its alarm, if you speak, he will turn gray and hate you. But I pushed past it. If he turned gray, then he did. I would not go on any more weaving my cloths by day and unraveling them again at night, making nothing.
Oh.
Ugh.
Oh.
Ugh. And she's stepping toward heroism in this beautiful, healthy way by telling the story. And she's stepping away from weaving.
Let's use weaving to talk about choosing mortality as the end of this book. So she steps away from all of that. She says, I'm no longer undoing it constantly, which is like, in a sense, something you can do when you're immortal. You can keep weaving by day and unraveling at night because you have unlimited chances. So like she's giving herself all of this time to like be who we have frustrations with, that passive Circe from the very beginning section, that passive Circe in her father's underground, that she always has time.
She has the exact quote kind of referencing exactly what you just said, which is on the very last page. She says, I thought once that gods were the opposite of death, but I see now they are more dead than anything, for they are unchanging and can hold nothing in their hands. So she's saying, I'm not going to be that way anymore.
I'm done with the cycle. I'm not weaving and unweaving, weaving and unweaving, weaving and unweaving. I'm going to choose the thing that gives me a finite amount of time. So I have to weave. I have to weave, or I have to permanently unweave, whichever one it is. I'm not going to be repeating this repetitively every single day.
I cry every time I read the last chapter.
I was stuck in an Airbnb with like 7 friends, and I was like, guys, I have to finish reading this book today. I'm going to go away because I know in the next 15 pages, I'm going to start crying. And they were all like, that's so beautiful that you know yourself that well. And I walked away, and then I came back, and they were like, you have obviously been crying. I was like, yup.
I don't know what it is, because I remember the first time I read Circe being so bummed when Penelope appeared, because I bought the propaganda. I never found her story interesting. It's specifically not. And I don't find motherhood interesting. So as soon as she had her son, I was like, bummer. This is now the rest of this book is not for me. And I was proven very, very wrong. Fool. And then the part that always gets me at the end of the book is when she starts describing her daughters that she's imagining and how different they're going to be and the personalities they're going to have. I don't know what it is. And it's such a difference because Penelope and Circe both had sons.
Yeah.
And now she says, I'm going to have 2 daughters. I really do feel like I have to say that not everything is always, at least for most of the Glacier, about gender.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes we really have to acknowledge that the tippy bottom of the Glacier is gender or racism, whether we like it or not, and that sucks. But I do think this book in particular is about gender. Because we have all these guys, and then at the very end, Circe and Penelope have made huge strides to live the life that they want to live and to be free and to be with people that love them and care for them, whether that is Penelope alone on the island, which she clearly thrives in, or Circe with this man who is constant for her. And now she says, I'm having daughters because I have made the world better.
Yeah.
And it is now a better place for them.
She can have a daughter. And she's with a partner who's going to acknowledge her daughter. God forbid she had a daughter with Odysseus. That wouldn't become anything. He wouldn't even look at her, you know? My weird connection that I'm gonna close for me on with the giving up of the immortality and choosing mortality is this phrase that keeps coming up over and over again at the final section of this book, which is, Carter's laughing because I put this in the outline really intensely, soft like wax. This simile keeps coming back. And I had never heard this phrase. Like I never heard people saying this. And maybe you guys, let me pause right now. Have you guys heard people use this like in literature a lot or in like everyday life?
Not particularly, but I was too deep down the weaving rabbit hole and the looking for witch references to be
to pivot to
sidetracked.
candles.
I couldn't do it.
You covered weaving, so I could cover candles. So thank you.
Yes.
But she keeps saying soft like wax, and it's being used in relation to her softening around Telemachus in particular, and finally softening. And even at a certain point when it seems like, oh, maybe this is fifth boyfriend, and then it kind of pulls back a little bit, and she's like, I'm not soft anymore. I'm hard again. Like screw you, goodbye. But then she starts to soften again, and it keeps coming back.
Mm-hmm.
I had never heard that phrase until recently. There's a song by the artist NIKI, NIKI, called Strong Girl, and it's from her most recent album, and she says it's about, you know, being a strong girl in the world and what that means. Soft like wax, sharp as an axe, both can't be true in my world. And that's the line. And that was the first time I had ever heard that phrase. And I'm thinking about this song, which is an excellent pairing to this entire book. And then I looked it up. I was like, soft like wax, like, where is this? Who did somebody coin this term? Is this an idiom in English language? I don't know. And the first thing that came up was a quote from The Waves by Virginia Woolf. Mother. It's in The Waves where she says, my spine is soft like wax near the flame of the candle. I dream, I dream. And we were speaking last week about the way that Circe throughout the book, when her godhead begins to rear and she begins to kind of tap into that immortality and tap into that Titan blood, she is either described as being like water or like fire, like her mother or her father. Her eyes glowing, her skin becoming hot, like becoming fiery, becoming flames. And I love that in this last part of the book, as she is stepping away from the godhead and stepping towards mortality, that she isn't the flame anymore, she's the wax. And not only is she no longer the flame, but to be vulnerable and to become vulnerable to the flame and whatever that flame means, like she is like now at the mercy of the gods because she is no longer a god herself. And she throws herself at the mercy of her father, at the mercy of the flame. And she says, I'm going to remain soft. Soft like wax, sharp as an axe, both can't be true. And I would love to believe that we are making a world where that can be true. But if it can't be, to make the decision to become soft instead of sharp is so radical and so scary. And that is what she's choosing at the end of the book. And that made me emotional.
Of course. It's brutal. And the first time we encounter her getting burned in a big way is when she helps Prometheus. And she was burned to the bone. And still it was worth it. And that is a really big moment that points to this beautiful metaphor that you've flagged. That even when it hurts and even when it goes badly, I would rather be this person than someone who, you know, watched someone suffer and ignored them or worse, laughed.
Thank you for bringing it back to Prometheus, because even the idea of Helios and what kind of heat he represents and the rage versus the fire that Prometheus gives to human beings, like how we can turn that flame out of something evil from our father and into something that represents mortality and the prospering of human life as
and
opposed
Prometheus
to the gods.
Was a craftsman. So he is also a maker. So we have this lineage of people who make things. Again, Prometheus made people and, you know, Daedalus, and Odysseus made war. And Telemachus makes a beautiful, constant life. Like the thing that really gets me is when Telemachus says, then we will go back. We will go back until you are satisfied. It was so simple. If you want it, I will do it. If it will make you happy, I will go with you. And then, not but 2 pages later, she says, we would take pleasure in the simple mending of the world. Ugh, I am undone. I'm undone. It's so comforting. Especially living in 2025 where there's this incredible push to be known or seen it on kind of a wider scale, where community is a much wider scope than it ever used to be. The idea of people who can see you, and to go back and say it is enough to make the world just a little bit better and to not be known and to have a couple of people say, I was helped by you being here.
I'm going to do it one more time. I'm going to make Circe about the Hunger Games, and I'm going to say for the last time this summer that this is a nugget for the patrons, because you only heard this conversation if you're on our Patreon about Sunrise on the Reaping, but I had a whole conversation, thanks to my friend Fiona Sullivan, who's been a guest before on this podcast, about the similarities between Hades Town, a myth, and Sunrise on the Reaping. And that these are big, big stories that turn into big, big revolutions, but that they start only because there is somebody who is trying to take care of the people that they love and the one person that they love. They are trying to do right by that one person, act out of love for that one person. They're not thinking about necessarily the bigger picture. They're saying, I'm going to take care of this one person, and I'm going to make this one person safe, and I'm going to save this one person, and I'm going to think about community, just the people in my circle. And that ends up having repercussions far bigger than they could possibly see or know or understand. And so to think, like you were saying, Rowan, about community and about how everything can be so overwhelming. But if you just say, me and this one person, we're going to take pleasure in the small mending of the world and the simple mending, that is all you can wrap your hands around. And that is productive. I promise to not talk about the Hunger Games anymore. I won't make SpongeBob SquarePants the movie
About the Hunger
Games.
If you can relate Circe to the movie of SpongeBob, gold star.
Oh, we're doing it next week.
Really?
It's the Odyssey. Yeah, the 2004 SpongeBob movie is an Odyssey
I haven't
retelling.
Seen it.
Okay.
Is it really?
Yeah, you would. If you had seen it, you would know it. You'd be like, oh, it's right there.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
But instead of Hermes' wings, it's David Hasselhoff's pectoral muscles as they shoot across the sea. We'll get into that more next week.
I can't wait.
This is the end of this book. We are rejecting immortality, which is in itself actually death. And we are choosing mortality, which in itself is truly life. I felt like this book was the Bible. My word was Bible. And we've been asking each week our guest if this is the Bible, and each set of chapters, each section, which I stewed over for so many hours about which section of chapters makes which parable. If this is a parable in and of itself, what is the lesson at the end of it that we're supposed to take about how to live our lives? There's a gajillion you could choose from, but I'm curious about which one is sticking for you right now.
It's such a good flag that this is doing what very often mythology strives to do, which is give you a lesson that I find modern retelling sometimes don't do. And I think for me, this book, the lesson is making something is an antidote to sort of the trouble of the world. Because you see all of these people throughout this book, in particular, this witch, which is the power is witchcraft, always making things. And sometimes in the case of Circe, it's making a son. She just tries to make a good person. But also then in the end, we just get trying to make the world a little better. And I think in the way that parables, you kind of try to put it on your modern life and see if it's still applicable in this content-driven world where we are pushed to consume and where our consumption is a tool, like the bread and circuses of it all. Making something is the fix for me. And people who make things are kinder to other people who make things. When you've toiled over a project, you are more empathetic to other people's toil. So I think craft is the big parable for me in this.
I absolutely love that. And I'm going to close us out maybe with one more musical quote, which is the opposite of war isn't peace. It's creation. From Rent. Thank you, Jonathan Larson, for that one. The opposite of war isn't peace, it's creation. I feel like it's exactly what Rowan just said and summarized for us so gorgeously. Those were my questions. I feel pretty solid on that. But I want to leave some room for if anybody else has anything they really wanted to say about this book or about the end of the book or any questions that are still lingering.
Well, I definitely think the previous question was a better place to end. So this is like an after credits question because this
is the epilogue conversation.
Right. This is not to your level, but if you had to pick one of Circe's 7 evil boyfriends, who would you pick? You got to ride off into the sunset with one of them.
Penelope doesn't count.
No, unfortunately.
That was where we landed on that conversation. It doesn't count. Telemachus.
Yeah. Okay, so he's off the list, so now we have to pick from the rest.
I think that I would cheat, and I really just feel like Penelope is the correct answer.
Croner said, dismantling your question, taken down the stage. My answer is still Penelope.
We love a woman in STEM. Okay, if Telemachus is taken and Penelope is taken, I guess I'll take Daedalus.
I think that's right.
Sure. I think that's all right. Penelope, woman in STEM. Do this with me real quick. A woman in STEM, Penelope. S is for stoicism. T is for Telemachus, mother of. E is for...
I've never thought of a word in my life.
E is for...
Educator? Do we? No, not really.
Extortion.
Sure, yeah. I love it.
Read the suitors. Read the suitors.
Read the suitors.
M is for mother.
Maker?
Maker. All right. Thank you for that. Sorry, anything else? I had to do that real quick. Carter, any final?
I really think the wax metaphor, like, I didn't think about it at all really when I was reading the book, but you got me on board. I really feel like that is the central lens for thinking about the last section.
That is one of those things I doubt Madeline Miller intended me to read it that way, but death of the author,
No,
baby.
she definitely did.
You think?
It's like too perfect of a metaphor. The idea of like wax being the way to contain the flames, and like you have to like destroy it in order to be useful. And softness comes from destruction. And I
felt like I was on my conspiracy board with the red string doing that one. So thank you guys for the validation.
I don't know if she was like full Pepe Sylvia pointing to Virginia Woolf. And maybe I am putting words in the mouth of a woman who can surely speak for herself. But with the absolute expert number of references and the weaving that she does throughout the novel, I really think you found quite a lovely string.
Thank you.
I'm going to ride this metaphor until it can't ride no more.
No, weaving, I want to bring back, I did want to add, like, kind of summarize and also as we head into the rest of our Odyssey retellings, when we first were covering this book, we said the reason we're doing this is we're starting with this and we're spending 6 weeks on Circe in our quest to understand the Odyssey before the Sea of Monsters season comes out of Percy Jackson, is that we love Circe because it is not the traditional masculine quest storytelling structure, that it is a feminine storyteller structure. And the word I kept using was spiraling, but I think weaving is also a really, really good word for that we are weaving in and out and back and forth and up and down around an idea and a set of ideas, as opposed to climbing up a mountain and coming down that mountain. I like weaving a lot for that.
That's ferociously cool choice of you guys, because I do think the obvious choice would be to start with the Odyssey.
And we chose to skip that.
And we're not even doing it.
I love that. I think that's very cool. Also, since Carter broke my previous question, I'm going to break my previous question. Daedalus, no, take a hike. I want Circe.
Hey! Yay! That was brilliant. Yay.
Do I want to be her? Do I want to be with her?
These are the questions we're never going to be able to answer on this podcast, but we can really keep asking. Rowan, that was the perfect ending. I'm not even going to say anything else. Please tell everybody where they can find you. Speak a little bit about Daggerheart. Please promote yourself.
Oh, yeah, thank you. You can find me everywhere on the internet at the Rowan Hall. I have a podcast called Willing and Fable, where we do tons of research on different history, mystery, and mythology, and then each week we write an original story related to the myth. Sometimes we retell the myth in our own words. Sometimes we write stories that are related. Sometimes I'll take a really unhinged stab at Athena, if you want to hate that lady with me. And check out Daggerheart. That's the game that we just released over at Darrington Press. It's sold out, but I think very soon it will not be. And that's really exciting too.
And I can come in here with a first-hand promotion. I played Daggerheart with Rowan, and it was so much fun. If you're a TTRPG person, if you're a game person in any way, shape, or form, you're going to love this game. It's so excellent. If you've ever been intimidated by the idea of GMing a game like that, Daggerheart would be the perfect place for you to start. It's so unintimidating and it really opens that door, I think, to people. It's something that I want to try GMing for the first time on. So I would highly recommend you go out and find a copy of Daggerheart at your local game store, or you can find it online. We'll have that link in our show notes. We'll have links to everything Rowan related in our show notes. Thank you, Rowan, for being here. We really, really appreciate
you so much.
Taking such detailed notes and being so prepared.
It is my greatest fear that I not live up to your guys' standards of podcasting. I love the way you go through beat by beat in these books, and I just want to do right by y'all because I love listening to you. You're in my ears constantly. So
I'm your biggest fan. That's ridiculous.
Study is my love language.
I understand. Go follow Rowan. She's the coolest person who's ever lived. I'm a big fan of her. And next week, we are going to cover the SpongeBob SquarePants movie. And the week after that, we're going to talk about the Penelope ad by Margaret Atwood, speaking of our favorite ladies. So that's what you can prepare in the coming weeks. And we will see you guys there. Bye, y'all.